There are few games that I've put over 1,000 hours into playing, and this right here is easily one of them, Unreal Tournament. Developed by Digital Extremes and Epic Games, and published by GT Interactive on November 22nd, 1999. Just 10 days before Quake 3, by the way, which also happened to be a multiplayer-focused follow-up to a single-player predecessor. And while both games did their part in ushering in a new era of multiplayer arena shooters, with Quake 3 finding a longer-lasting foothold in competitive gaming, it's Unreal Tournament that first earned my affection and hasn't let go since. Even over 2 decades later, I still find myself going back and dropping hours at a time fragging dudes with a flat cannon, and I'm certain I'll be setting up rest home LAN parties to play when I'm old. Though it wasn't actually the full game that first got its hooks in me, but rather the UT demo that dropped about a month and a half before hitting store shelves. And it's all thanks to its inclusion on a magazine demo CD, this cover disc from the December 1999 issue of PC Gamer. Yeah, these CD-ROMs were a godsend since demos were getting larger all the time, my dial-up connection wasn't getting any faster, and I rarely had the cash for brand new games. So me and my buddies went nuts over this one demo's selection of maps, game types, and weapons, thoroughly enjoying the fact that we could play both solo and multiplayer for free as long as we wanted. Good times. And the demo kept me satiated long enough that it wasn't actually until over a year later that I grabbed the full version. In particular, it was the Game of the Year edition I picked up at the Electronics Boutique in Haines Mall, having released on October 27th of 2000. As soon as I had the cash, I snapped it up and rushed home to play for like 3 years straight, so naturally this is the version we'll be looking at throughout this video, since it updated the game to the final official patch, version 436, and added a good number of maps, models, weapon mutators, and gameplay mods like Rocket Arena and Chaos UT. And much of the new content was made by fans too, which I always found inspiring. Like if I got familiar enough using Unreal Ed, then maybe I could get a job at Epic someday. It seemed somewhat reasonable in my mind since they'd just moved their offices to Cary, North Carolina, which was only a couple hours away from where I lived. And with it, Epic had dropped Mega Games, becoming simply Epic Games, with Unreal Tournament being the first game released under the new moniker. And not to say that UT was anything short of a mega game, this thing was truly a top-notch title in terms of tech. Just look at all those logos. So many APIs, processors, chipsets, and online multiplayer services. And this latest implementation of the Unreal Engine made it slightly harder to run than the original Unreal, but it was still impressively optimized. As long as you had, at minimum, a 200 MHz Pentium with 32 megs of RAM, chances are you could play the game with some degree of success. So let's go ahead and do just that with the original Game of the Year Edition CD-ROMs. Once you got things installed and configured for your graphics card of choice, Unreal Tournament begins by dropping you into another in-engine cinematic flyby. Instead of a shiny castle getting hit with lightning, this time around it's a future sci-fi cityscape, complete with narration because plot.
In 2291, in an attempt to control violence among deep space miners, the New Earth government legalized no-holds-barred fighting. The Andrew Mining Corporation, working with the NEG, established a series of leagues and bloody public exhibitions. The time has come to prove you are the best. To crush your enemies.
See them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
So yeah, sometime after the events of Unreal, the Human Scar War is over, and people are bored, so consensual murder is legalized, and there's a big old corporate-sponsored tournament where everyone kills each other. Sounds great, but not as great as that menu music. Alexander Brandon, take me to heaven. Timeless. Mr. Brandon and Mr. Van den Bosch follow up their work on Unreal and composed a good chunk of the soundtrack, along with contributions from 5 other talented tracker musicians. It's all top-shelf mod music as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, from here you're free to dive straight into multiplayer or engage in solo pursuits, with options to play the Unreal Tournament or play a
practice mode,
which lets you create your own custom match to play against bots. If you dabbled in the bot match mode included in the original Unreal, then this'll look quite familiar, with match rules, settings, and bot options all able to be customized to your liking. There are fewer game types, but the ones that are included are much better focused and balanced, with a lot more possibilities opening up by applying mutators. Another thing you can modify is your name, team, class, and skin, with additional face and voice customization that you didn't have in Unreal, and of course, bots can all be modified as well, both cosmetically and in terms of skill level, with up to 16 total players able to populate each map. Yeah, whatever, enough screwing around. Let's grab a minigun and... This right here, this is the good stuff. A happy place filled with memories of adolescent after-school gaming, late-night LAN parties, and rapid release of any pent-up frustrations. You gotta admire a game that is precisely what it looks like, and Unreal Tournament is refreshingly straightforward. It's you and a bunch of bots and/or human opponents duking it out for survival in one of a handful of gameplay modes, ranging from standard death matches to capturing items to objective-based missions. No matter what you're playing though, online or off, Unreal Tournament to me has always provided a specific strain of infectious gameplay. One I've found continuously intoxicating ever since I first began playing at 14 years old. I'd describe it as high-intensity zen. A sort of altered flow state where your mind clears and time melts away, yet your heart rate stays high and your alertness level remains at its peak. No joke, every time I drop into a good match with solid opponents, the world around me fades and I completely lose all train of thought, except for that perfect loop of fragging, dying, grabbing weapons, repeat till the next map, over and over. So long as I've got the right controls at least. I still find it harder to play without an old Microsoft mouse, either the IntelliPoint PS2 or the optical wheel mouse I used back in the day. Something about its particular rounded shape, the bulbous palm feel, the rubbery scroll wheel coating, the exact sensitivity of the sensors mixed with the right in-game speed settings, and I still test every new computer mouse I get with UT just to make sure it can get the job done. If I can still pull off a sniper ultra kill streak on CTF Face or DM Deck 16-2, then I know it's a mouse I can live with. Though regardless of your chosen input method, Unreal Tournament is all about making the best of every tool at your disposal. And that typically involves guns, lots of guns, and ones that are notably more enjoyable to fire than before. The entire Unreal arsenal has wisely been tweaked, upgraded, or replaced outright. The pistol, minigun, bio-rifle, shock rifle, sniper rifle, rocket launcher, and flat cannon all make a return, but each one has been altered and amped up for maximum effect. Like the Automag pistol has evolved into the Enforcer, now able to be dual-wielded for some hard-boiled akimbo action. The Stinger is now a Predator-invoking minigun that shoots bullets with tracer rounds instead of blue shards. The Razorjack is now the Ripper, and its alt-fire mode spews forth high-speed explosive discs that detonate on contact. The GES bio-rifle can be charged up to release globs of sludge big enough to annihilate players with full health and armor. The 8-ball launcher is now just the rocket launcher, and its alt-fire lobs groups of rockets that bounce around until they explode. The sniper rifle now has an overlay when you aim down sights, and its headshot capabilities are as on point as ever, even without a scope. The shock rifle's trademark secondary fire detonation combo is even deadlier and remains wildly satisfying anytime you pull it off. The flak cannon is functionally the same as before, still shooting burning shrapnel and explosive rounds, fine by me because it's perfect. And one of the new weapons is the pulse gun, which blasts green bullets of plasma in rapid succession with a fantastic alt-fire that bolts out a steady stream of plasma, acting as a mid-range hit-scan attack with a bit of lockdown where opponents can't jump or dodge. Then there's the Redeemer, the literal nuclear option. You'll rarely grab it, and it only ever has one round, but that singular shot packs a thermonuclear warhead. You can either shoot it blind and let it detonate where it may, or use alt-fire to switch over to the warhead to directly control it like a tow missile. It's slow-moving and opponents can actually shoot it down, but more often than not, if you see that massive rocket overhead, it's already too late. Unless you can outrun that deadly shockwave, that's that.
Double kill.
Lastly, there's the Impact Hammer, which, I suppose it proves useful as a last resort if you run out of ammo, but it feels more like a Nerf gun than an effective melee weapon. By the way, anyone ever play Nerf Arena Blast? Yeah, I had to mention this one since I know someone's gonna bring it up. It's a pretty nifty little game that often gets described as a kid-friendly Unreal Tournament, though it actually released a few weeks before UT in 1999, being based on the multiplayer code from Unreal Gold. Anyway, getting back on topic, the Impact Hammer sucks. So I always swap it out with the chainsaw using a weapons mutator, not only for its Doom 2 inspired excellence, but that secondary fire where you reliably lop off heads is far too fun to go without. Or the Bastard Sword if I'm playing Game of the Year edition, which isn't quite as satisfying, but it certainly helps act out some of those boyish barbarian fantasies. And whoever's idea it was to tie the camera to the player's bouncing head model whenever you're decapitated, just brilliant. Also of note is the Translocator, a handheld teleportation device that's only available on certain maps. It acts a little like the flak cannon's secondary fire where you launch a projectile forward at an arc, and wherever it lands is where you can teleport to. Mighty useful stuff on the modes it's available on. On that note, there are 5 game modes in the original UT, with a 6th added in Game of the Year. First up is, of course, Deathmatch, and it's exactly what the old gods of id Software intended. Kill or be killed, with the goal being to rack up the most frags before either a time limit runs out or a maximum frag limit is reached. Team Deathmatch is more of the same, with colorful teams competing against each other for cumulative kills. Last Man Standing is a battle royale of sorts, where players have access to every weapon and a set number of lives. The goal is simply to survive until time runs out or everyone runs out of lives, and if you lose all yours, you're knocked out and relegated to spectator mode until the end of the match. Capture the Flag explains itself, being an objective-based team deathmatch where each side has its own flag that can be grabbed and brought back to their bases to be captured. You've got to have your own flag at your base to capture a flag though, so there's often a lot of frantic waiting around for other players to do their job. Domination is a somewhat similar mode in that it involves capturing things, but instead of a flag, each team needs to capture areas of the map. The longer your team holds an area, the more points you acquire, until some number of points is reached or time runs out. Then there's Assault, which is UT's foray into objectives-based missions. Teams are tasked with either defending or attacking a base, with attackers attempting to push forward and accomplish objectives before time runs out, and defenders trying to prevent this from happening. And the longer a team manages to defend their base, the more time they'll have to attack next round. Now, there's some pretty memorable stuff here, like infiltrating an armored ship to destroy its generator and take command, dropping in from a helicopter onto a locomotive and making it all the way to the front of the train, and overwhelming a castle's defenses piece by piece until you eventually make your way inside. Now, I still really enjoy Assault mode, just with a notable caveat, and that is that playing with bots in this mode kinda sucks. Don't get me wrong, the bots are still highly effective at killing you off, especially on Adept and higher difficulty levels. And Steve Polge's bot tech remains some of the most human-like deathmatch AI I've ever seen in gaming. It's solid stuff. But in modes like Assault, the bots tend to cheese the objectives in rather irksome ways. On some maps, they're wildly more effective at completing objectives than you are, and on others, they're so inept at finding and completing objectives that they're basically not helping you at all. Which makes things somewhat vexing here and there when playing through the single-player Unreal Tournament campaign mode. This is a preset selection of matches taking you through most of the content in the game, divided up into game types, starting with Deathmatch, with the other modes unlocking in sequence after you've completed enough of the previous ones. It's simply a basic framework that guides you through the entirety of UT, one map and one mode at a time. You're given a shiny polygonal trophy after successfully winning each match in a game type, shown off in the trophy room, and the end goal is to become the Unreal Tournament champion, attained by finishing every match and unlocking the final challenge maps. And since you have to win every single match in every mode to reach that point, this is where the AI can get in the way during modes like Assault and Capture the Flag, and it becomes a slog to endure during the final third of the campaign. I didn't much like it 20 years ago, and I certainly don't have much patience for it now, but anyway, once you do complete everything, it's on to the final challenge, Zan Krigor. It's said no one knows who or what Zan is, but I'll tell ya, Zan's a dirty cheating punk, that's what.
Fear me.
Okay, so maybe he doesn't cheat exactly, but the bot's reflexes and accuracy are cranked way up, and the map you fight him on, it's filled with a couple of power-ups that are great to have yourself, but suck if Zan gets them, namely energy shields and invisibility. Whatever, he's dead. Suck my hip thrusts. Congratulations, you're the winner of Unreal Tournament. Have another shiny trophy. Except it's not the end by a long shot, because let's be honest, the single-player campaign is practically an afterthought. UT is all about the thrill of ongoing battles, improving your skills, taking on new players online, and modding the crap out of things. And I continue to appreciate how effortless UT's system is for micro-modding through mutators. Effectively, mutators are smaller gameplay modifications that switch up existing game types, things like the aforementioned chainsaw and sword options. On up to gameplay modifiers like low gravity, instant rockets, no item pickups, and a mode where combatants grow skinnier or fatter throughout each match depending on how well they're doing relative to other players. One that I almost always have enabled is volatile ammo, which makes it so every ammo pickup explodes when hit, making for an additional strategic element to watch out for that can heavily damage or kill nearby players. Relics are another mutator that changes things up quite a bit, adding specialized pickups that augment players' armor, health, speed, damage output, respawning ability, and so on. And of course there's Instajib, by far one of the more popular and frenzied mutators in every UT game in the series. This equips every player with the Super Shock Rifle, a roided out version of the original that instantly jibs with a single shot from any distance, anywhere on the map. It is absolute unbridled madness in the best possible way. Seriously, nothing in gaming even comes close to a 16-player Instajib match on Fractal Reactor or something like that. The noise, the jibbing, the screaming, the constant blast of adrenaline until someone finally wins. Perfect. Yeah, if you're into this kind of non-stop bonkers carnage, adding a couple absurd mutators to the right map is a recipe for memorable matches. Even without mutators, some of these maps stand out for their creativity even now. Like Morpheus with its low-gravity antics, consisting of 3 towers floating above an endless abyss in the middle of space for some reason. And Pressure with that one room holding the rocket launcher and buttons on the outside that locks the chamber, pressurizing anyone inside until they pop like a bloody balloon. And I truly don't know how many countless times my friends and I played matches on Facing Worlds, Deck 16, and the other Facing Worlds, modded Facing Worlds, just man Facing Worlds! Shout out to designer Cedric Fiorentino. That one map, its successors and imitations, remain some of the best multiplayer experiences around. The straightforward symmetrical layout, the spacey rotating skybox, the sniping potential, the sheer adrenaline rush whenever you actually capture a flag, and that drum and bass soundtrack, As enjoyable as the maps and mutators were from Game of the Year edition, though, it was truly only the beginning of the UT experience. Because once you hop online, all of a sudden it becomes clear that the community forked off in 100 different directions from the main game. Custom maps, mods, game types, and game versions are all over the place. And while the scene obviously isn't nearly as active as it was in the early 2000s, Unreal Tournament remains fully playable online without much hassle. Yeah, GameSpy servers shut down years ago, but the master server is still online as of the making of this video, and even if that goes away, connecting to community-run servers from around the world is no problem. And whenever you log into a server that's using stuff you don't have, it automatically downloads all the required custom content. Yeah, connecting to these fan-run servers back in the day is what really got me diving deeper into the UT modding scene in a big way. That and religiously reading websites like Planet Unreal, and of course, Cliffy B's Ownage, with a 0. Yes, I swear I downloaded like every single map Cliff recommended here, and I don't recall ever being disappointed either. It was good stuff. Man, and who didn't download Matrix Moves at one point or another? This mutator took advantage of the game's built-in dodging and speed adjustments to provide that trendy bullet time gameplay, offering up what is perhaps the most early 2000s mod imaginable. It feels like every single FPS in the 2000s got a Matrix mod at some point, but this one right here was always one of my favorites for UT99. Yeah, UT99. Yeah, retroactively that's what it was called at least. It's always gonna be UT in my mind, but once the 2003 and 2004 follow-up games arrived, distinguishing each one by year started to make sense. And having said that, I also gotta mention the later console ports, because they weren't half bad. I was always amused by the fact that both the Sega Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 ports allowed playing with a mouse and keyboard, so that was awesome. And while there was a Mac version sold separately, there was also the regular retail PC version that included a Linux installer on the disc as well, making this, I believe, the first retail Linux game I ever played. I want to say I was using Knoppix. Yeah, I was so annoyed with Windows Me back then that I ended up running certain games from a Linux Live CD for a while. And of course, nowadays the Game of the Year edition is available digitally on services like Steam and GOG. And while it works well on modern systems as is, I'd highly recommend some of the fan-made patches, with the old Unreal project a particular standout, being a comprehensive set of modern updates for the game that's still in active development with Epic's blessing. But anyway, yeah, that's Unreal Tournament. It's got the proper mix of creatively designed maps, satisfying weapons, and tightly constructed gameplay that made it an instant classic back in '99, and it's all even more classic now, having aged to a point where it's both thoroughly of its time and highly refreshing compared to modern multiplayer FPSs. It's a style of arena shooter that we simply don't get anymore. Heck, arena shooters in general feel like an endangered species, and it stings a little every time I see a promising new one come along that falls flat. Even with its own direct sequels and spin-offs, as good as many of those were, I've still never gotten quite the same vibe and excitement as I have from the OG UT. And with Epic's reboot apparently shelved completely, perhaps I never will again. At least, not until the next time I boot up Windows 98 on a Pentium 3 PC, and I'm translocated back to weekend LAN parties in the basement with my friends and I at the turn of the millennium. If only for a moment. And if you enjoyed this LGR retrospective, then check out my video on the original Unreal, or stick around for new videos each week here on LGR. And as always, thank you for watching.